First up, Kashmir is not part of Pakistan. This is what angry protesters in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir told Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir. The Rawalakot region erupted once again as the joint Awami Action Committee accused the Pakistani military of dropping explosive drones on peaceful demonstrators. The dangerous escalation points to the increasing resentment against the Pakistani administration. On GRAVITAS, we get you every detail of what's happening in POK. Meanwhile, in a big loss for Donald Trump, the US Supreme Court has upheld birthright citizenship, standing against Trump's order which called to end this right of a US-born child. The verdict comes as a big relief for millions of Americans and a setback for the Trump administration right ahead of the November midterm elections. And here in India, entire bridges have washed away, villages have been cut off, and several roads are completely destroyed as the northeastern states of Assam and Arunachal Pradesh reel under flash floods and landslides. Thousands of people have been affected in the monsoon fury. We get you the latest.
Kashmir Pakistan ka hissa nahi hai. Allahu Akbar.
Another day, another fire that burns in peacemaker Pakistan's own backyard. Kashmir is not part of Pakistan. Asim Munir and Shehbaz Sharif have been told what India has been saying for decades now. The only difference is that this time it's the angry protesters in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir who have said this to them. Hours after the Joint Awami Action Committee, or the JAAC, accused the Pakistani military of using explosive drones against peaceful demonstrators, Aman Khan of the JAAC said that Kashmir is not part of Pakistan. His words were greeted with a huge round of applause.
Ceasefire line पे 0 point पे तितली नोट हमारी खवातीन और हमारे बच्चे वहाँ धरना दे के उनसे वफादारी कश्मीर पाकिस्तान का हिस्सा नहीं है कश्मीर पाकिस्तान की रियासत का हिस्सा नहीं है ये पाकिस्तान का
He also warned that if Islamabad keeps on blocking food supplies, locals may turn to other routes. Listen in.
ये जो कहते हैं कि राशन जो है वो कश्मीरियों का राशन बंद करेंगे, मैं कहता हूँ हमें तुम्हारे राशन की जरूरत नहीं है, तुम्हें हमारी जरूरत है। थोड़ा ख्याल करो, तुम्हें हमारी जरूरत है। कहीं ऐसा न हो कि बाकी रास्ते खुल जाएं और फिर तुम हमारी मिलते करो, हमारे तरले करो, कहीं ऐसा न हो।
Now, the Rawalakot region, remember, has witnessed weeks of escalating unrest, deadly confrontations and an intensifying political crisis. What began as a political dispute over representation has now evolved into one of the most significant internal challenges faced by Islamabad in the region in the recent years. These protests have drawn attention to the sentiment that prevails on the Shehbaz Sharif government. For several weeks now, towns, including Rawalakot and Muzaffarabad, have witnessed demonstrations led by the Joint Awami Action Committee, which is a grassroots movement that says that it is fighting for political rights as well as economic reforms. The movement raises long-standing economic demands: cheaper electricity generated from local hydropower, subsidized wheat, greater local control over resources, and broader governance reforms. While authorities say many earlier economic demands had been addressed, the dispute over political representation remained unresolved, becoming the flashpoint for the current crisis. And so the question that many are asking within Pakistani circles is this: are the days of the government numbered? Senior Pakistani journalist Arifa Noor, in her column in the Dawn newspaper, points out the government's lack of success on the economic front and its inability to gain popularity. I quote her here. The government has little to offer other than its mantra of stability. And this is frankly of little consolation to people who have experienced backbreaking inflation and a slower than a tortoise economy for the past so many years. Even less needs to be said about the PMLN's lack of popularity. She goes on to state about the civil-military leadership that this is more than a hybrid regime now. It is one in which the civilian side takes no risks and asserts no power. There is only one side writing on the page. The other is simply following the moving finger. Not just journalists, Pakistan's former Prime Minister Shahid Khaqan Abbasi also called the administration out. He said that it's unfortunate that the oppressed people of Kashmir were fired upon simply for demanding basic rights, adding that there is no rule of law in the country. Essentially, Pakistanis are calling out Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif for acting less like a leader and more as a yes man to Field Marshal Asim Munir. And the proof is all there. From Asim Munir leading the meeting with President Trump at the White House to talking to Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi directly, the Field Marshal seems to hold the reins in Pakistan instead of the civilian Prime Minister. As far as the economy is concerned, Pakistan's GDP growth is projected to be 3.6% by the IMF, which is much below India's and a lot of other countries, while its unemployment rate is at 6.9%. Now, even as Pakistanis face deep economic challenges, the violent instability in Rawalakot exposes the administration's fault lines, where the government chooses to crack down on protesters instead of genuinely listening to them. The Pakistani administration says that security personnel came under armed attack. Officials allege that some protesters opened fire, attacked government installations, damaged public property, and surrounded military facilities. The JAC supporters accused security forces of using disproportionate force against the demonstrators and the mourners. The International Human Rights Foundation documented a recurring trend of deadly crackdowns on the JAC protests, including violence in May 2024 and in October last year, that claimed multiple lives. The rights body called on the Pakistani authorities to immediately halt the use of deadly force against peaceful protesters, lift the internet shutdown, release all individuals who were arbitrarily detained, and revoke the ban on JAC. It has also urged an independent and impartial investigation into all civilian deaths with full access for international observers and accountability for those who are responsible for the unlawful use of force. That clearly hasn't happened yet. Extended shutdowns have disrupted transport, businesses and banking, road closures and internet restrictions have affected livelihoods. Taxi drivers, shopkeepers and daily wage earners have all reported severe economic hardship as repeated strikes and security operations continue in the region. Since the ouster of the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, Bangladesh has been recalibrating its foreign policy. For instance, its Prime Minister Tariq Rahman, he chose Malaysia for his first foreign visit, despite receiving invitations from both India and China. Now, the Bangladesh Prime Minister's fresh stance on a long-standing water dispute is likely to rankle India. Speaking during a budget discussion in the parliament, Tariq Rahman pledged to implement the Teesta River Comprehensive Management and Restoration Project at any cost. He also stressed that it was the national priority to ensure water security, support agriculture, and improve livelihoods in northern Bangladesh. The 414-kilometer-long Teesta River, remember, originates in the state of Sikkim in India. It flows through West Bengal and enters Bangladesh. And since 1971, India and Bangladesh remain at loggerheads over the water sharing from this particular river. As far as Teesta's catchment area is concerned, 83% of it lies in India, whereas the remaining 17% is in Bangladesh. Bangladesh is quite dependent on Teesta, which is being its fourth largest river. Crucially, remember, it covers 14% of its cropped area and it supports livelihoods of 73% of the country's population. Now, how does the Teesta project concern India? Well, there's a China connection to it. After Tariq Rahman's recent visit to China, where he met with the Chinese President Xi Jinping, Beijing agreed to provide help within its capacity to the Teesta project. They also decided to expedite the feasibility study of this project, which genuinely entails river dredging to prevent seasonal outflow of water, creation of embankments, and the construction of large water reservoirs. This is likely to raise alarm bells, particularly in New Delhi, owing to growing Chinese footprint in the area, in India's neighborhood. It's also a key geopolitical flashpoint, as that the Teesta project is, remember, close to the strategic Siliguri corridor, which is also known as the Chicken Neck. It is a 20-kilometer wide strip in West Bengal that connects mainland India to its northeastern states. Now, the Teesta project is being seen as a workaround to the long-stalled water-sharing deal between India and Bangladesh. Back in 1983, both sides had agreed for an ad hoc sharing of the Teesta waters, which was supposed to last till 1985. Under this arrangement, India would retain 39% of the river's dry season flow, whereas Bangladesh was to receive 36%. However, a lasting agreement proved elusive. In 2011, then, reports indicated that both nations had finalized a draft 15-year water-sharing plan, which reportedly allocated 42.5% of Teesta's waters to India and 37.5% to Bangladesh. However, West Bengal's assent was necessary as water is a state subject. Ultimately, the deal could not be signed due to the strong opposition of the then West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. She maintained that sharing of the Teesta water will deprive North Bengal of drinking water. Meanwhile, China stressed that its involvement in the Teesta project was not targeted at any other country.
China is willing to provide support and assistance within its capacity. We would like to emphasize that China-Bangladesh cooperation is not targeted at any third party, nor is it subject to interference from any third-party factors.
On its part, India's Ministry of External Affairs maintains that issues pertaining to Teesta will be addressed with Bangladesh through structured bilateral mechanisms. But China's involvement in the Teesta project is now being viewed as another example of its rising influence in Bangladesh. China remains Bangladesh's largest trading partner. Remember, in March last year, the interim government led by Muhammad Yunus had claimed to have secured a commitment of $2.1 billion in investments, loans and grants from the Chinese government after Muhammad Yunus met with Jinping in Beijing. In another sign of deepening bilateral ties, China hosted 15 officials from Bangladesh PMO for a training program in June. Now, this delegation included private secretaries to the Prime Minister, directors and protocol officers. This assumed significance as India was Bangladesh's preferred destination for training its officials earlier. Amid this, there is hope for a prospective India-Bangladesh deal on Teesta, with the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party now coming to power in the state of West Bengal. Shifting our focus now, the guns are silent, but the threat remains. Israel has warned that another war with Iran could erupt, while Tehran says that it is ready to respond. Behind the fragile ceasefire, a battle of threats, secrets, and military calculations continue. On the diplomatic front, U.S. envoys Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff are in Doha, but there's no meeting that is scheduled with the Iranian side yet. This, remember, comes after the U.S. president had claimed that Iran had requested talks after last week's strikes. Our next report gets you more details.
The ink is barely dry on the landmark Memorandum of Understanding signed between Washington and Tehran. Yet the machinery of war is already priming for action. 2 brutal rounds of comprehensive warfare have already scorched the region. The missiles remain on standby, the fighter jets ready to launch. This hard-won truce was supposed to reset diplomacy, but a deeper undercurrent of espionage and volatile brinkmanship threatens to drag West Asia into a catastrophic trap. Israel's defense minister has warned that the country could go to war with Iran tomorrow if circumstances change. Katz claims Israel will forcefully retaliate if Iran launches missiles, further saying that this message has already been delivered to U.S. officials. He confirmed that the Israeli military has designated targets selected and remains on high alert to execute immediate strikes. He further adds that hostilities could resume within 2 days, and his directive to the IDF is to prepare for a blue and white operation in Iran, which essentially means an independent Israeli action. Adding another layer of mystery, reports have emerged that US President Donald Trump vetoed a Mossad plan to support Kurdish forces against Iran. The decision has sparked debate over which Israeli and US officials backed the proposal and how close the plan came to moving forward. Almost immediately, Iran's caretaker defense minister issued an equally aggressive response, warning that Tehran has its finger firmly on the trigger. He made it clear that any violation of the truce by regional actors would unleash an immediate, devastating response. With intelligence lines blurred and armies mobilizing, the region stands on a knife edge. The question is no longer if the truce will fracture, but who will strike first? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And the big news that came in from the United States of America: in a flurry of judgments, the U.S. Supreme Court has handed down 3 major judgments in the last 2 hours. Now, one of these verdicts will make Donald Trump frown and 2 makes him smile. Let's quickly break down these judgments one by one for you. First up, in a major setback for Donald Trump, the U.S. Supreme Court has upheld the birthright citizenship, striking down Trump's executive order denying citizenship to a U.S.-born child if one of the parents is not a legal American citizen. The lower federal courts had earlier, remember, unanimously rejected Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship. But the crucial ruling from the Supreme Court's conservative-leaning bench brings in a huge relief for millions in the country. The other big ruling that came in today serves as a win for Donald Trump. The U.S. top court has upheld states' ban on transgender women athletes in women's sports. The Supreme Court, which has a 6-3 conservative majority in its bench, has allowed states to ban trans athletes from girls' sports teams. The ruling essentially comes after months of dramatic legal battles between the Trump administration, the conservative-leaning states, and trans athletes, along with their allies. Now, the conversation, remember, has been just more than a legal process. It has stirred a cultural debate in American society, further deepening the liberal versus conservative perspectives. U.S. President Donald Trump quickly dropped a social media post. He hailed the Supreme Court verdict, upholding the ban on transgender athletes playing in women's sport. He said, and I quote him, "The United States Supreme Court just ruled against men playing in women's sports. Wow, that takes that ridiculous situation off the table." Now on to the third case, which relates to political spending. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of a Republican-led lawsuit that included Vice President J.D. Vance. The court has lifted a Watergate-era cap on political spending. Now remember, this gives political parties a more central role in the flow of political money around election time. The US president has lauded the Supreme Court ruling lifting this restriction on political spending. He called it a big win for the Republicans and the First Amendment of the US Constitution. However, remember, there's no comment from Trump on the setback regarding birthright citizenship. Today's decision by the Supreme Court puts a legal end to this discourse. Remember, on the first day of his second term, US President Donald Trump signed an executive order banning trans athletes from competing in women's sports. Trump argues that the practice is demeaning, unfair, and dangerous for women and girls. All right, moving on. China's treatment of its ethnic minorities has long been under scrutiny. Now, US senators across party lines have expressed grave concern over China's new law, which threatens the religious freedom of Tibetans and Uyghurs. Enacted in March this year, the law on promoting ethnic solidarity and progress will come into force on the 1st of July. In a letter addressed to the Chinese envoy to the United States, Republican Senator and close Trump aide Lindsey Graham, along with Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, urged the Chinese government to either revoke or substantially revise this legislation. Now, let's quickly tell you what this law is all about. On face value, it is aimed at creating a shared national identity among the country's 55 ethnic groups. Mandarin Chinese is now mandated to be taught to all children before kindergarten and up to the end of high school. Minority languages cannot be the primary language of instruction anywhere in China. The law also seeks to ban any interference with marriage choices based on ethnicity, custom, or religion to enable more marriages between people belonging to different ethnic groups. One of the biggest bones of contention in this entire law is a provision which allows action against people based out of China, that's abroad, who are accused of undermining China's ethnic unity. In their letter, the US senators dubbed this provision as an unacceptable violation. They stressed, and I'm quoting them, "The law on promoting ethnic unity and progress is detrimental to and attempts to eliminate the unique identities of Tibetans, Uyghurs, and others." They in fact also highlighted the detrimental impact of this law on more than 1 million Tibetan children studying in state-run boarding schools. Earlier in April, the European Parliament too had passed a resolution condemning this law. It called China out for what it called are its repressive assimilation policies and consequent violations of human rights in Tibet, Xinjiang, and Inner Mongolia. The members of the European Parliament also rejected China's attempt to interfere in the succession of the Dalai Lama. Meanwhile, Beijing dubbed this criticism of the law as an interference in its internal affairs. Listen in.
They presumptuously criticized China's ethnic policies and the development of the rule of law. Such actions constitute gross interference in China's internal affairs, and we are strongly dissatisfied and firmly oppose it.
Remember, this row has again brought focus on the plight of Uyghurs who reside in the resource-rich province of Xinjiang. Human rights groups have accused China of detaining Uyghur Muslims in highly guarded facilities to homogenize their cultural, religious, and political beliefs. Beijing, on the other hand, refutes this, claiming that it merely runs a vocational training program for the locals. In fact, this is not all. Remember, in May, the United States had accused Beijing of persecuting Tibetans over their unique cultural and religious beliefs. It also asked Beijing to release the Panchen Lama, the second highest spiritual authority in Tibetan Buddhism, who was reportedly kidnapped by Chinese authorities 31 years ago. China and Tibetans in China have also been at loggerheads over the process to determine the Dalai Lama's successor. Moving on now, Israel has entered the global race to develop space-based laser weapons. The country's defense minister, Israel Katz, reportedly said that Israel wants to become the world's leading power in developing the ability to strike targets from space placing itself alongside other major powers pursuing next-generation space warfare. Katz reportedly said that Israel is recruiting its top scientific talent to achieve this goal. He reportedly stated that developing space attack capabilities would strengthen Israel's deterrence and give it a decisive military edge over its adversaries. So what exactly is a space-based laser weapon? Well, such a weapon reportedly uses concentrated beams of energy to disable or destroy targets without conventional explosives. Laser beam conventionally carries enormous heat, even exceeding 3,000 degrees Celsius. That can potentially burn through metal, melt components, or disable electronics within seconds. Such systems could potentially target enemy satellites, intercept incoming threats, or even eliminate dangerous space debris. Now, it is important to factor the fact that Israel perhaps has an edge in laser-based defense. Remember, its Iron Beam system became one of the world's first operational laser air defense platform capable of destroying rockets, drones, and mortar shells at a much lower cost than traditional interceptor missiles. The country is also reportedly exploring laser technology for fighter aircraft, while analysts have speculated that Israel's Arrow 3 missile system, which can strike ballistic missiles in space, may also have the ability to destroy enemy satellites. Now, Israel joins an increasingly competitive global race. The United States, remember, has invested heavily in directed energy weapons for missile defense, and it continues to develop advanced laser technologies for future space-based military ops. China has expanded its counter-space capabilities as well, and it has invested in directed energy research, while Russia has continued to develop anti-satellite technologies. Germany, on the other hand, has also pledged $41 billion to guard its skies and satellites from Russian and Chinese threats by building a space defense shield. In fact, both China and Russia have already demonstrated anti-satellite capabilities by successfully destroying their own satellites during weapons tests. Now, military experts believe that future conflicts could increasingly extend into space. Countries are developing capabilities not only to destroy satellites, but also to jam, blind, damage, or disable them. So Israel's latest announcement perhaps underscores one message. The race to dominate the battlefield of space is accelerating, and the competition among the world's leading military powers is only becoming more intense. With that, let's tell you what's coming up next on Gravitas. With Europe reeling under intense heat wave, France has now blamed United States for the climate crisis. It's essentially the developed versus developed country battle over global warming. And today's social media day, how much of your life is spent online? Well, we are getting you all about it up ahead. But first, let's talk about India. The probe into the alleged embezzlement of donations at the Ram temple in Ayodhya has gathered pace now. The SIT has questioned former Sri Ram Janmabhoomi Tirth Kshetra Trust General Secretary Champat Rai for over 3 hours. Remember, this comes days after he offered to resign, taking moral responsibility for the entire controversy. Now, in the latest, the probe has revealed that several serious procedural lapses in the process of counting and depositing donations, which facilitated the alleged embezzlement. The police have questioned Champat Rai to understand how donations were received, how they were counted, and then deposited into the bank. Now, Champat Rai, who has served as the General Secretary of the Trust, was overseeing the management of the temple offerings and donations, fell within his purview. Champat Rai is not named as an accused in the FIR that has been registered so far. But remember, among the 8 individuals who have been arrested include his personal driver, Ram Shankar Yadav, and Manish Yadav, who's the nephew of Ram Shankar. All those who've been arrested will remain in judicial custody until the 13th of July. A crucial meeting of the Ram Mandir Trust in Ayodhya is now preponed to 6th of July. Remember, this meeting was previously scheduled for the 11th of July. As per sources, a decision on restructuring of the trust could be taken during this particular meeting. The resignations of the Trust General Secretary Champat Rai and the trustee Anil Mishra are also likely to be discussed. Well, let's talk about northeastern India. El Nino's shadow looms large over India's rather unusual monsoon season, while delayed rains in large parts of the country are raising concerns over the impact on agriculture and water stock. Heavy rainfall in northeastern India has resulted in floods. Meanwhile, in Mumbai, a school student tragically died and multiple others were injured after a tree uprooted due to heavy rainfall and crushed their school bus. India has been grappling with an acute rain deficit, and it has recorded its 5th lowest June rainfall in a period of 126 years. The country's official weather forecasting agency, the IMD, has revealed that India received 99.5 millimeters of rain in June as against the average of 165.3 millimeters. And therefore, the rainfall deficit stood at a staggering 40%. While July typically accounts for a significant share of the country's seasonal rainfall. The IMD has predicted that the next month rainfall will be less than 94% of the average. On the other hand, floods have caused widespread damage in the upper Assam region. As per the administration, 7 out of 35 districts in Assam have been affected by floods, thereby impacting 45,000 people. The state government has also set up 5 relief camps. Similarly, continuous rainfall has resulted in a flood-like situation in several areas of the state's Dhemaji district. Relief and rescue operations are underway at the moment. The situation in the state of Arunachal Pradesh has worsened as well, as heavy rains have battered the state over the past 5 days, damaging houses, roads, bridges, and public infrastructure. The death toll has increased to 4, while 21 others have been injured. Overall, more than 90,000 people across all 28 districts have been impacted. In fact, Sikkim has been grappling with heavy rain as well. For instance, the Bailey Bridge in North Sikkim was completely washed away over the weekend following heavy rainfall. This disrupted road connectivity in the area. Meanwhile, Union Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia, who also looks after the development of the northeastern region, spoke with the chief ministers of Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim and Manipur to review the flood situation. He assured them of every possible support from the centre. Amid the flood situation, the people's resilience has been on display. Partaking in the ongoing FIFA fever, hundreds of football fans flocked the CM FIFA Fan Park in Assam's Dibrugarh, where they can watch World Cup matches on large screens. In other news, a deadly historic heat wave is melting Western Europe, sending temperatures soaring to unprecedented heights. As public infrastructure buckles under the blistering strain, a fierce political row has erupted in the French capital. Paris officials Paris officials are pointing fingers across the Atlantic, directly blaming Washington for the catastrophic weather. Our next report gets you the latest.
A brutal heat wave is sweeping across Europe, pushing temperatures to dangerous levels and putting millions under extreme heat warnings. From packed cities to scorching streets, Europe is facing another test as climate pressures intensify. Now, the heat crisis has sparked a fierce debate over responsibility for a warming planet. According to the UN Health Agency, more than 1,300 excess deaths have been recorded in Europe since June 21st. The deadly heat wave has spread across parts of Europe, with France facing intense heat, as authorities warn people to protect themselves from dangerous temperature. The extreme weather has also affected Eastern Europe, where countries like Slovakia and Czechia have reported record heat levels. Locals in Hungary's capital Budapest say that the weather is getting hotter and hotter than ever before.
I'm on vacation today because I came up from the countryside, and by the time I got there, it was around 32 degrees in the apartment, so I quickly changed into my swimsuit and we came down here.
We have to learn to live with this. In Mediterranean countries, people already know there is the siesta, taking a little break in the afternoon and then getting back to work.
Farmers fear drought as Italy's longest river runs dry. The Po River has never fallen this low so early in the year, raising fear of a devastating drought in July in this corner of northern Italy. The problem is that, being at the end of the Po's course, we only get the water left over after everyone else has met their needs. There is no equitable redistribution of this resource, yet we aren't second-rate farmers compared to the rest. We need water just as much as any other farm in Italy. But as temperatures rise, a political storm has also begun. Paris Deputy Mayor Audrey Pulver has blamed US carbon emissions and wider fossil fuel use for worsening climate impacts linked to extreme weather. The comments have reignited a global argument over who carries responsibility for climate change and how countries should prepare for a hotter future. The remarks quickly drew attention, turning the heat wave into a larger debate about emissions, climate policy and accountability. Scientists and climate experts have repeatedly warned that rising global temperature is increasing the risk of more frequent and intense heat events. For millions facing the rising mercury, the issue is no longer just about records and forecasts. It is about surviving another wave of extreme weather. As Europe battles the scorching conditions, debate over climate responsibility is growing hotter than ever. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
From connecting families across continents to shaping public opinion, social media has transformed the way we live, work and communicate. But as these platforms become more deeply woven into our daily lives, governments across the world are also stepping up efforts to protect children from their harmful effects. On World Social Media Day today, numbers tell the story of both unprecedented growth as well as a growing concern. People across the world observe Social Media Day every year on the 30th of June, a tradition that began back in 2010 to recognize the expanding role of social media in global communication. 16 years later, social media has become an integral part of everyday life for more than 2/3 of the world's population. According to the data reportal Digital 2026 Global Overview Report, social media users account for more than 68% of the global population. The number of users has climbed from fewer than 500 million in 2005 to 2.27 billion in 2015 and then 5.66 billion in 2025, driven largely by affordable smartphones and wider internet access. Now, the average active user spends 18 hours and 36 minutes on social media every week, or about 2 hours and 39 minutes each day. Over a year, that essentially translates to more than 40 full days that are spent on these platforms. East Asia records the highest social media penetration at 88.1% of its population. Northern Europe is another region that follows in at 79%, Western Europe at 77.7%, and North America at 74%. At the other end of the scale is Central Africa. It has the lowest social media usage at 12.1%, followed by East Africa at 12.6% and West Africa at 19%. Facebook has been ranked as the world's largest social media platform with 3 billion monthly active users. Instagram and WhatsApp each have 3 billion monthly active users. Google's YouTube follows in with 2.58 billion monthly active users. Now, as social media use continues to grow, governments are tightening regulations as well, particularly to protect children. The European Parliament has backed proposals to set the minimum age for social media access at 16. Australia became the first country in the world, remember, to enforce a nationwide ban on social media for children under 16 in December last year. Indonesia and Turkey have also introduced a similar ban, while various other countries are planning to adopt similar such measures. Exiled Chinese entrepreneur Guo Wengui has been sentenced to 30 years in prison by a federal court in New York. He's, remember, convicted of defrauding investors of more than $1 billion. Guo, who is a former real estate businessman, relocated to the United States in 2015 after facing allegations of financial fraud in China. In exile, he reinvented himself as a Communist Party critic and built a loyal online following. He maintained ties with former U.S. presidential advisor Steve Bannon, forming the New Federal State of China, which is a political group that opposes China. Bannon was arrested in August of 2020 in an embezzlement case. Then in July of 2024, Guo Wengui, who's also known as Ho Wan Kwok, was found guilty by a jury on charges including wire fraud, securities violations, and money laundering. Prosecutors said that he used his online influence from 2018 onward to persuade thousands of people to invest in his companies or projects that promised high returns and luxury benefits. According to prosecutors, Guo raised more than $1 billion from online followers who joined him in investment and cryptocurrency schemes between 2018 and 23. According to the New York court judge, Annalisa Torres, Guo had preyed on those who were seeking to bring democracy to China, taking their money to fund his own lavish lifestyle. He's now been sentenced to 30 years in prison for running the billion-dollar scam. A sudden blast has shattered the calm of Monaco, leaving investigators racing to uncover what happened. The police in Monaco are searching for a suspect after an explosion left 3 people wounded. According to authorities, a couple in their 50s or 60s suffered life-threatening injuries, while a 13-year-old suffered less serious injuries in the explosion. Emergency services rushed to the scene. As per reports, one of those who were wounded was Ukrainian oligarch Vladimir Mulyavev. He is a multimillionaire Monaco resident who has been subject to sanctions from Kiev since December 2023, which Ukrainian security services reportedly said stemmed from his alcohol business activity in Russian-occupied Crimea. The blast took place at the entrance of a residential building in Monaco near the border to France. The microstate of the French Riviera, also known as a haven for billionaires and their luxury yachts.
It happened suddenly. There wasn't a sound just before it. That's just how it was. We didn't see it coming.
The incident has triggered a major investigation, with authorities working to understand how the blast happened and who may be responsible. Public prosecutor Steven Thibault said that a suspect had left a bag or package in the building's lobby before leaving. He also added that nothing appeared for the moment to indicate why the building might have been targeted. The Monaco government said the strong explosion was caused by a parcel bomb.
Visibly, an explosive device was placed in front of the entrance of a building, injuring several people. One person fled, running to the town of Beausoleil. We have been able to follow him with a camera in the town of Beausoleil. We have immediately informed the French National Police, who are working in collaboration with the municipal police of Beausoleil and obviously with the security of the Principality of Monaco.
Officers are now focusing on identifying the suspect and establishing the events that led to the blast. The search operation continues as authorities piece together information from the scene. All right, let's get to the big breaking news that's coming in at the moment. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has had a telephonic conversation today with the President of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian. President Pezeshkian briefed Prime Minister Modi on the recent developments in West Asia and the way forward. Meanwhile, PM Modi has welcomed the understanding that has been reached, and he reiterated the need for continued efforts toward ensuring lasting peace and stability in the region. In fact, Prime Minister Modi has reaffirmed India's consistent position that all issues must be resolved through dialogue and diplomacy. The Indian Prime Minister emphasized the importance of sustained efforts to safeguard the freedom of navigation and commerce while promoting peace and stability in the region. Now remember, these talks come right ahead of the funeral of the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei that will be held, where Bihar Governor Syed Atta Hasnain and the Minister of State for External Affairs, Pabitra Margarita, will be representing India there at the funeral. So important conversation that has happened between Prime Minister Modi and President Pezeshkian. Let me quickly go across to my colleague Siddhant Sibal, getting us more details. Siddhant, this is a crucial conversation that has been held between Prime Minister Modi and President Masoud Pezeshkian. Get us more details. The Indian Prime Minister once again reiterating that dialogue and diplomacy is the way forward.
But a key conversation coming just days before the funeral of the former Supreme Leader Khamenei will start on 3rd of next month. Now, we know that during the conversation, there were three key aspects. The Iranian side briefing about the West Asia situation, their perspective. We know that the US and Iran have come to an understanding that was signed electronically earlier this month. Now, the second aspect is India's position. The Indian Prime Minister reiterating India's long-held position, a foreign policy element that we have heard several times from 2022 when the war in Ukraine started, to, of course, earlier this year when the war happened in West Asia, the attacks on Iran. That is, dialogue and diplomacy is something that is the way forward. And thirdly and lastly, India's core priorities. Safeguarding freedom of navigation, that basically means that Hormuz should be open for shipping and commercial vessels. We know that there have been restrictions and it looks restrictive even as we speak. There have been vessels that have been coming towards India since the understanding was achieved, but there is a dagger still hanging, essentially impacting India's energy security. India, of course, in past several months since the war started on 28th of February, has diversified its energy needs, especially crude oil needs, but LNG still remains essentially fixed to the situation there. Of course, India has been getting LNG from other parts of the world as well. So, three key aspects and key conversation ahead of the funeral ceremonies, where India will be sending the Governor of Bihar and the MOS in the Ministry of External Affairs, Pabitra Margarita, as we have pointed out.
Right, Siddhant, thanks very much for all those details. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressing support for dialogue and diplomacy as well as stability in the West Asian region to the President of Iran, also listing out the key concerns that India has as far as the Strait of Hormuz is concerned. All right, with that, let's shift our focus now to other updates. China has exposed 3 major cases of financial fraud by local governments, revealing how officials allegedly manipulated records to make their performance look better. The Chinese state media says that the cases involve fake revenue figures, misuse of government funds, and hidden debt. The Communist Party's anti-corruption watchdog released the findings as part of its campaign against misconduct. The biggest case comes from China's Nanning. Authorities say the city falsely added nearly $420 million to its 2024 revenue. Officials allegedly recycled the same government-owned land through multiple transactions and even used one plot as many as 18 times to create fake income. In Gansu province, meanwhile, investigators say officials wrongly labeled a landscaping project as flood control work to secure nearly $8 million in special government funding. In Zhejiang province, officials allegedly forged contracts and inflated asset values to raise money for infrastructure projects. Investigators say this created hidden government debt worth more than $103 million. The Chinese government has not named the officials involved or announced any punishment in these three cases yet. But these revelations come as Beijing intensifies its anti-corruption drive right ahead of next year's Communist Party National Congress. Authorities say the campaign aims to stop local governments from inflating numbers through fraud and to ensure that officials are judged on genuine governance rather than manipulated statistics. The development comes as hundreds of China's top military officials just completed weeks of intensive ideological training at a camp that was designed to reinforce loyalty to Xi Jinping. The Communist Party and the Chinese military leadership, and it also, remember, comes just a week after China's ruling Communist Party officially declared a new branch of Jinping's political philosophy as party doctrine. It places strict discipline and complete unity at the center of the Communist Party. Let's talk about soccer now. The race for the Golden Boot at the 2026 World Cup could go down as the greatest in the tournament's history, with some of football's biggest names shining on the biggest stage. The race has turned into one of the most interesting subplots of the tournament. Leading the table is none other than Argentina captain Lionel Messi. The legendary forward has already made history by becoming the all-time leading goal scorer in the history of the World Cup. Messi, who turned 39 last week, has been in outstanding form, scoring 6 goals in 3 games. That includes a hat-trick against Algeria, a brace against Austria, and a stunning free kick against Jordan, making him one of just the 3 players to score in all 3 group stage games at this year's tournament. Now, just behind Messi are 2 French superstars, Kylian Mbappe and Ousmane Dembele, with 4 goals each to their name. The reigning Golden Boot winner, Kylian Mbappe, remember, scored twice against both Iraq as well as Senegal, whereas reigning Ballon d'Or winner, Ousmane Dembele, scored a goal against Iraq, followed by an impressive hat-trick against Norway. The Norwegian superstar Erling Haaland, remember, is going toe-to-toe with the Frenchman, playing his first World Cup. The goal machine is providing tough competition in the race with 4 goals already. Haaland poses a real threat to any team that he faces. Meanwhile, Brazil's Vinicius Jr. is also on 4 goals each, and like Messi, he scored in each of the 3 group games. Now, what makes this battle so very special is not just the number of goals, it's the quality of the players who are involved. World Cup winners, Ballon d'Or winners, former Golden Boot winners, and some of the greatest forwards of their generation, all chasing the same prize. And by the end of the tournament, we could very well have a scenario where the all-time record is broken twice in the same tournament, with Mbappe just 3 behind Messi in the all-time list as well. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas. As always, we'll keep getting you updates and analysis. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.